of time, ring out the news, another day is through. Someone slipped and fell. Was that
But again, I just want to again wish everyone a happy, the women here, a happy Mother's Day. As I was saying before, our women are at a crossroads. Our women being raised up today that look at the filth on TV, that look at reading newspapers, and they have this image of women that no longer respects God, no longer have a Christ-like spirit in them. They think that the concept of a woman is, Madonna, some trash, singer, or some actress on TV, and that's how they look at women. That's how they look at what a mother should be. And unfortunately, a lot of our children are growing up in the world looking at that. And so we as Christians need to understand that every single day our women are being attacked. Our girls are being attacked. Their souls are being robbed from them. They're being taken away from them with the idea that their race, their blood heritage is not important. They look at themselves that their ability to grow up and marry to godly men, to raise, be having a family, raising children, steering the children in a godly manner. So often that's considered taboo anymore. We see that every single day. And those of us that have those women in our lives, it's very important to recognize and be thankful every day that we have those women, those mothers in our families. A mother is the one that raises a child to love God, to love Christ, even more than a father. A mother is there 24/7, raising a child, bringing a child up in a godlike manner, giving them the direction of loving Christ, loving their people, loving their families, recognizing how important their blood is, passing that on to the next generation. As I said, that so often people, so-called Christians, they may attend church, they may, think that's good, but they don't realize the importance of that bloodline is definitely important. Unfortunately, we here at the church and those, other Christian identity churches, we're blessed that we recognize that. We're blessed to understand how important our women are in our lives. So often we take that for granted. And that is something I think why Satan hates women more than men. My dad has said this many times growing up, and I think it's definitely true. Satan hates women more than men because women are the ones that basically steers the next generation. Women are the ones from little up, like I said before they are even being born. They're talking to their child. When the child is born, they're sitting there, singing to them, teaching them, raising them up in a godly manner. And Satan knows that. Satan knows that our women are the glue that combines and builds our families. They are the key to start that next generation, to be warriors of Christ. They know that. Satan knows that. And that's why there's such an emphasis on this filth out there of trying to destroy the family. If they can destroy the mothers, if they can destroy the idea of motherhood, the institution of motherhood, then Satan knows that is an attempt to destroy his people. That is why he truly does hate our women more than men. our women, we so often take for granted and the important role that they have had now, present times, as well in the years past. Women, historically, in our churches, have always adored Christ. They have always stood up for Christ. They have always been a helpmate to the men and fathers. They have always been used by God to further his purpose and plan of what's called dominion mandate. That basically means that Adam and Eve, from the very beginning, had that dominion mandate to go and take command of the earth, to go and subdue it. And that dominion mandate can only be broken if there's not a next generation coming up to fill that gap. If Satan can do that, Satan can destroy the next generation, if he can destroy our families, then in his idea, that's how you destroy God. Because if you can destroy God, you can destroy his purpose. And so when we look at history, of our women, specifically here on Mother's Day, we are here to recognize, to give reverence to our mothers, to give the institution of motherhood and to praise and honor them, give them the recognition that they needed. Women have always stood along with their husbands for God. They have always stood that for God. And so often we don't really recognize that. Specifically in the Bible, we don't recognize that. And that's why this Hollywood filth industry, as I mentioned before, they do not want our women to grow up with that idea that they have an important part in this plan of God's conquest, of restoring his kingdom on this earth to bring the next generation up. And so today, with motherhood, Mother's Day, and honoring our mothers, we need to recognize that. We need to recognize the importance of our mothers, regardless if they're our sisters or our grandmothers, our aunts, our great-grandmothers, whatever it may be. The institution of motherhood is vitally important and is being attacked expeditiously today. It is being attacked greatly. As I said before, oftentimes, of course, I'm an attorney, in the court system, I see that effect. I see how women, they grow up, and they do not honorably represent motherhood. Their parents so often were maybe involved in drugs, maybe had associated with people that did not have love for the Christian faith, have love for their race, did not consider their bloodline was importance at all, and that steered them that path of destruction. And that is something that is really moves me to recognize, even with my own daughters, that we want to raise them in a godly manner, raise them to be defenders of our faith as they get older, to be good role models as they get older, to their children, to their sisters, or their cousins, or their friends. We want our women to understand how important they are, and how important they are in raising godly men and godly women in the next generation. And that is something that is vitally important. Part of that importance of raising godly children is understanding their bloodline. So often we forget and we don't take our bloodline seriously. There's people that we talk to on the streets every day. Each one of us know. We talk to people on the streets who really don't recognize how important their bloodline is. They just kind of consider like, okay, well, we're white, that's fine. But as far as cherishing it, honoring it, They don't put any importance to it whatsoever. And the Ten Commandments, one of the main ones is honoring your mother and father. Honoring your mother and father. And what does that mean? Yes, that means obey your mom and dad, listen to them, and if you don't, you get a whipping, you get time out, wherever they may be. But also honoring our women, our mothers, that's instructed in the Ten Commandments, means honoring their bloodline. Honoring our women that has gone out before us, that has stood the test in time from the very beginning of loving our people, loving our race. If you don't have that love for your race, if you don't have love for your bloodline, your generation, the next generation, won't have that love. They won't have love for the bloodline. And that's why it's so important in the Ten Commandments is saying, honor your mothers and fathers. It's vitally, vitally important. And every day, like I said, we talk to people who don't have that love for their people. They don't have their love. And we know that that's one of the most important things that the Bible teaches us is we have to honor our bloodline. We don't want to be those in the Bible that have discounted their race, did not think it was important. And we want our children to grow up loving that. We want them to love their fathers and mothers and recognize how important their bloodline is, how important it is to pass that on to the next generation. I remember years ago, my brother Nathan, and he was about to get married. Him, my dad, and Nathan, they went to a local Ozark Baptist Church. I think that's what it was, Ozark Baptist Church, and sing about using their church to perform, to have the wedding there, and use their building. That was before we had all this. And the pastor there, who's no longer the pastor there, met with us, and he was excited to see us. And he was kind of open to the idea about maybe letting us use the facilities there. And he made the comment that, hey, I believe like you guys too, I know how you guys teach. I believe how important it is about race and faith and homeland. He understood that importance. He understood how that was vitally important. I remember my dad said, well, why don't you preach on the next Sunday, put in the paper, that you're going to preach a message of race and family. And boy, he kind of like sat back with eyes open. It was like, I can't do that. I can't preach about love of race and family. My congregation will be depleted very quickly. People who may not believe in their race, they're going to leave quickly, and I'm going to have a small church. And so that was a kind of an example of a pastor who supposedly loved his people, who loved his children, but was not willing to preach about how important it is to love your race and your faith and your family. And so those people in that congregation, they were being instructed in Christian principles, but they did not have love for their race. And this was like 30 years ago. So very much, most of that next generation of those people in that congregation raising children are not going to have that love for their race and how important it is. They didn't understand the concept of passing your bloodline to your next generation and how important it is to keep your generation, your bloodline pure. And so it's very, very important that we all have to recognize, and those specifically on the internet that I'm talking to, we have to understand the importance of teaching our children, for our mothers to teach our children, the importance of motherhood, the importance of raising our children in godly manners, Christian manners, and raising them for a love for their race. If they're not passing that on to the next generation of loving your race and being instrumental in that and stressing that, how important it is loving your race and passing that on to the next generation, then we will lose them. It is that simple. We will lose the next generation if we are not passing that concept and that mandate by God to pass our ideas of honoring your mother and father, which is your bloodline, to the next generation. If we don't do that, we will lose them. And that is why it is so important in the Ten Commandments. It talks about honoring your mother and father. That is vitally important, because if you don't love your blood, if you don't love your bloodline, you're not going to pass that on to the next generation. That is why Satan hates our women. Our women, our motherhood, are the ones, the instrumental figureheads in families that raises godly children. Like I said, Satan knows that. He knows how important that is. And so, Mother's Day, today, I want to look at some great mothers in the Bible, great women in the Bible on Mother's Day. We so often don't focus on that, and we need to understand this concept and how great our mothers are in the Bible, how that idea and concept has continually been passed on from the very beginning until today, how important it is, the motherhood, the institution of motherhood, how vitally important it is, and specifically why women specifically need to understand why Satan hates you so much. That Satan despises you. Satan hates you. He wants you to not follow the Christian principles. He does not want you to raise your children to love their race and their faith and family. He does not want your children to grow up with that concept. And that's why he hates women. And every woman here, and those specifically on the internet that are listening, that may have not heard this before, Satan hates you more than anything, because you're going to be bringing the next generation up to love God, love Christ, and love his race. And that's why he hates you. So we're going to look at some just quick examples of the Bible. I know I'm kind of running out of time, but some quick examples in the Bible of godly women, and how important it is that we need to do that. We need to look at our women, our mothers, and give them the honor and respect that so often we forget, we sometimes neglect to do. And so we're going to do that very quickly. Very beginning, Eve. We look at Eve, Genesis 2:21. And the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he slept. And he took one out of his ribs and closed up the flesh instead thereof. And the rib which the Lord God had taken from man made he a woman, and brought her unto the man. And Adam said, This is now bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man. Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. And so there, from the very beginning, God was already putting the institution of a family together, of a unit, of a family that would continue to bring a dominion mandate on this earth, to bring control of the earth, to recognize that eventually his kingdom would be established on this earth. And that is something that we need to remember. Eve, the very, very beginning of motherhood. And if we look at 4:20 very quickly, we can see where it says the serpent beguiled the woman. And beguiled in Hebrew means nasha, which means seduced. And then we're going to go to Genesis 3:15. A lot of this I don't have on the screen. I think I have this one. I'm going to see if I have it. I do. This is very, very important. Genesis 3:15 says, I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his head. So this shows that there was a battle from the very beginning between the children of Eve, which we believe that who we are, the children of Eve, our people, and the seed of Satan. Enmity means a hatred, a hostility, animosity. This is why there is such a hatred today, such a hatred from the false Jews of today that has no racial connection of Israel and the Bible. No racial connection whatsoever. And that is why we see these modern day Jews that have a hatred towards Christianity, has a hatred towards our people, specifically white people. That's why they are the ones that promote the pornography industry. That's why they are the ones that promote race mixing. That's why they promote this idea of Judeo-Christian, that it doesn't matter. Just if you're a Christian, you can race mix, you can have non-white children. It doesn't matter. Your bloodline is not important. And that is why they are the ones behind this, because from the very beginning, there has been a war going on between the seed of Eve and the seed of Satan. That's another sermon in itself, but God recognized that, and that's why it's in the Bible. And most people kind of glance that over, and they don't really understand that. But that is why there is such a hatred, of historical hatred, between the Jews, which are Khazars, and the white race, Europeans, because from the very beginning there has been this hatred. And there's a war been going on. And it's a war that even is going on today. And that is why we, and specifically mothers, need to recognize that there's a hatred towards their family from Satan. We're going to look at another person, another great woman, great mother, Sarah. We look at Genesis 17, we look at Sarah, who's identified as the great mother of Israel. She was to be the mother of many nations, and kings of people would be of her. Sarah was a very much independent, godly woman that was a princess in her own right. God had used both Abraham and Sarah for his mission to establish the Abrahamic covenant. Again, if we don't understand the Abrahamic covenant, then we really don't understand the Bible. There's that covenant that God gave to Abraham from the very beginning and to Sarah, that he's always going to be with them. He's always going to deal with that family. He's always going to deal with those people, specifically with them. And you could say that Abraham and Sarah was the first Christian family since the Abrahamic covenant was only to our people. Professor Flinders Petrie, which I would really, people look into this fella. I was reading about him several days ago. He was an English Egyptologist and archaeologist. He has written a slew of subjects regarding Sarah and other women during that time. What's interesting about this fella, Flinders Petrie, if I'm saying his name correctly, he was born in 1852 and died in 1930. He is the one that really has made the idea of how you know how civilization has transpired over the years, the concept and the method. He's the one that has made the method of going out to a field, to a site where you might be digging up, and determining when you're finding objects in the ground, how long ago those objects have been in earth. And you then can start identifying civilizations based upon those objects in the earth. He was the one that came up with that method, and that's the method that is being used as of today. That's a primary method of seeing how different civilizations have started and gone throughout the years. It was this fella. And so he has written many, many books on Sarah and godly mothers in the Bible. He says the early idea in the East was separate rules of men and women, while women retained their own rights and all the property. The first woman, Eve, who appears as a personality in the Old Testament, is Sarah, the chiefess, as her name implies. Sarah is a regular old term for a chief, still kept in the East. Her independent position is seen by her living in the place of Pharaoh or in the court of Amalek, quite irrespective of Abraham. Sarah had her independent residence at Mamre and lived there, while Abraham lived in Beersheba. And it is said that he came to mourn her and to bury her. Her position, therefore, during her wanderings and her later life was not by any means that of a secluded dependence, but rather that of an independent head of the tribe or tribal mother. So we can see where Sarah, the mother of Israel, was esteemed not only by Abraham, but was considered of a high stature during her time, which recognized with Israel of the next generation of millions of women and men that would come out of her, that would establish the kingdom of Israel, that would continue this idea that mothers have an important place in raising godly children. It's very important that we don't forget about that. Another great woman and mother, Rebekah. We read about Genesis 24. We can read how when Abraham was old and he was stricken of age, Lord had blessed Abraham and all his things. And Abraham had told his eldest servant of his house that he ruled over, that I wanted you to go out and I want you to find a woman, a mother for my son Isaac. And he told him to go out and not take a wife of the daughters of the Canaanites where he had dwelled, but he wanted him to go into his own country, his own kindred, and take a wife unto my son Isaac. And so it shows there how important Abraham acknowledged the importance of getting a wife and a mother, not only one that would help Isaac, but also who was racially connected to Isaac, one of his own people, his own kindred. And so the idea of that bloodline being so important, and the importance of having a godly woman to raise that family, to steer the next generation, is vitally important. We look at Genesis 24:60 regarding Rebekah, and it says, quote, "And they blessed Rebekah and said unto her, Thou art our sister. Be thou the mother of thousands of millions, and let thy seed possess the gate of those which hate them." Again, the same idea about Genesis, of how important it is for our mothers, our women, to understand that they have that responsibility, that their seed is to possess the gates of their enemy. And that's an identification mark of the white race, Europeans, that we possess the gates of the enemies. We are the ones that are the standard bearers of the Christian faith and the Christian religion. We are the ones that have blessed the world. And our mothers, a godly mother, helps in that direction. If we don't understand that, and specifically, if our mothers don't understand that, we lose our next generation. Another one, and I got this kind of a general, the midwives of the Hebrews. Again, we're looking at just women, mothers of the Bible that we are honoring in Mother's Day. Exodus 1:13. A lot of people read this and they just kind of glance it over, but it's vitally important. And the Egyptians, this is in Exodus 1:13. "And the Egyptians made the children of Israel to serve with rigor, and they made their lives bitter with hard bondage, and mortar and brick, and all manner of service in the field. All their service wherein they made them serve was with rigor. And the king of Egypt spake to the Hebrew midwives, of which the name was the one of Shiphrah, and the name of the other Puah. And he said, When ye do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew women, and see them upon the stools, if it be a son, that ye shall kill him, and if it be a daughter, then she shall live. But the midwives feared God, and did not do as the king of Egypt commanded them, but saved the men children alive. And the king of Egypt called for the midwives, and said unto thee, Why have you done this thing, and have saved the men children alive? And the midwives said unto Pharaoh, Because the Hebrew women are not as the Egyptian women, for they are lively, and are delivered ere the midwives come in unto them. Therefore God dwelt with the midwives, And the people multiplied and waxed very mighty. And it came to pass, because midwives fear God, that he made them houses. A beautiful example of midwives, women, that basically said, we are not going to obey the mandate of the Pharaoh of saying, killing our children, killing the next generation. We are not going to do that. And they did not. They stood faithfully for their families. They stood faithfully for their children, even though they did not know what was going to happen. Pharaoh could easily said, all you midwives, we're going to take you, we're going to kill you. Midwives were not going to do that. A great concept, a great understanding for our children to understand the beautiful concept of how you can stand courageously during the times when they want to destroy our children. And it's very important that our children growing up understand that they have that ability to say no, to stand up for those that want to atrocize them, who want to genocide their race, who want to genocide their bloodline, the next generation. So that is something, again, honoring our people, honoring our women, our children, or our women, and the institution of motherhood in the Bible. I love that part. Miriam, Exodus 2:15. Again, we look at Miriam. 3 remarkable children were born in Egypt to Amram and Jechred of the house of Levi. And if you look at the Bible, Miriam was a young girl who was obedient to her mother. The Pharaoh had basically said, we're going to kill all the boys. And Miriam followed faithfully to see her brother, what was going to happen with her brother. And when the Pharaoh's daughter approached, took her brother, Miriam approached the princess, the Pharaoh's daughter, and basically said, I can help find someone who can nurse him. And she then went and got her mother. And in the Bible, it talks about how Moses' mom was then paid by the Pharaoh to raise her own daughter. Again, a beautiful concept of how even girls, small girls, can understand how they can serve God and be faithful to God. And then we can see how Miriam, when she gets older, how she was instrumental along with her and Aaron. It was a family. Connection when they led the children of Israel out of Exodus. And Miriam, at the very end, talks about how she was not only a prophetess, she was a sister of Aaron. She took a timbrel in her hand, and this is when Israel had crossed the Red Sea, and she led all the women with timbrels and with dances, and sang unto the Lord and praised God. And that is a glorious thing to see how Miriam, being the sister of Moses and Aaron, played an instrumental role in helping Israel crossing the Red Sea, but to inspire them and to praise and honor God. I know I'm really out of time, so we're going to go very quickly. Deborah, Judge chapter 4 and 5. Deborah was a prophetess. She was also a judge in the Bible. She holds one of the great women and mothers in the Bible. She helped to free Israel out of Canaanites, and she led Israel. And for 40 years, she led Israel with glory and wisdom, and she brought peace to Israel. A great person, a great woman, a great mother who led Israel, and God called upon her in order to lead Israel, and that is in the book of Judges. We're going to look at Hannah, 1 Samuel 1-2. If you remember, she was married to Elkanah. There was 2 wives. There was Hannah and Peninnah, if I'm saying that correctly. And she did not have any children, and she prayed to God that please let me have a child so I can dedicate him to God. And God gave her the blessing, gave her a son, and she named him Samuel. And she dedicated Samuel to the Lord. And after 3 years of old, Hannah took Samuel and took him to Eli. And Samuel grew up to be very much a godly man, started the College of the Prophets. And again, the idea of a mother who prayed to God, who wanted to raise a child in a godly man, or godly principles and godly direction. And that's something, again, all our women, we need to continue to honor our women and mothers. Understand that they have a duty and obligation to raise their children to love their God and love their people. That is vitally important. And Hannah is a good person to look at with that concept. We also can look at Huldah. She was another prophetess in 2 Kings 22. And she had taken the house of Israel was captive in 725 BC, 104 years earlier, before the final downfall of the house of Judah. And I love this portion of the Bible because Josiah, not my son Josiah, but Josiah in the Bible, who was called the boy king, he saw this. The priest came to him and said, what is this? This is the book of the law, which was the original one from Moses that I put in the ark. And with all the restoration, the reading this, they did not understand it because Israel was living in sin. Judah had lived in sin. And basically they then took this book of the law and they gave it to Huldah, who was a high priest, who was a high prophet, who understood the concept of what God had instructed his people, understood the laws. And so they took it to her, and she directed the people the right direction. She directed Judah in the right direction in order to make sure that they would go back in the right path. And from there, Josiah, as a king, was able to direct his people to live in godly manners and godly lives, specifically under the direction of Huldah. And it's very important, again, to understand the concept of motherhood, concept of our women, how they play a crucial role in the past. Look at Mary, Jesus' mother. First, we look at her, how she was given the great responsibility to deliver Jesus. And for years and years and years, young women would grow up thinking, am I going to be the one who's going to bring the deliverer? Am I the one who's going to be able to have this honor? And she was found favorable to God to bring the deliverer, Jesus Christ, to this earth, and then to raise Jesus in a godly manner, in a holy manner. And so that is, again, the concept of motherhood, how important it is to bring our children in a godly manner. We look at Elizabeth, John the Baptist's mother, who was a cousin of Mary. She was married to the high priest of Zacharias, and she raised John the Baptist, and was the one who was bringing the good news of the people about how Jesus was going to come to deliver our people. We look at the women of Galilee. These are women that just mentioned in the Bible of Jesus. And in Galilee, where Jesus was favored, and highly respected because racially they were connected to him. It mentions in the Bible about Mary Magdalene, Joanna, the wife of Chuza, Mary, the mother of James and John. All of these women devoted their lives to Jesus and his ministry, and devoted to follow him and help him and be able to be an integral part of his ministry. Great mothers, great women who believed not only in Christ, but believed in the teaching of keeping our people separate and understand the concept that Jesus came to deliver Israel. Something that we so often neglect. So as in conclusion, we need to remember, especially on Mother's Day, when we look in the Bible, look at the institution of motherhood, that there is a slew of women, slew of mothers that we did not even discuss, like Ruth, Queen Esther, and Queen Sheba, Tifa, Claudia, Abigail. All of these women and mothers who were an integral part in this concept of raising our children in godly manners, steering them in the next generation, giving them the ability to understand that our children has to be raised not only with godly principles, but principles where they respected their bloodline. They knew that that was vitally important. We can look even up to the Revolutionary War and all up to that time period, how women have always stood with the men in raising children to honor them. So that is why Satan hates women. That's why he hates the motherhood, because he understands that our women, our mothers, are the glue that keeps the family together. They are the ones that are instrumental in raising our children and bring the next warriors of Christ up to fruitful, to be adults, and to continue this wonderful work, what I would call it, and what we all call it, is the white Christian revival. Vitally, vitally important of our institution of mothers. And so hopefully we all understand the concept. I know we here, and this church does. Those listening to this in the internet, hopefully you understand. That's why I titled this message, "The Love of a Mother is the Ultimate Warrior Against Satan." If a mother has love for her children, her bloodline, then we understand that our children will not be lost, our families will not be lost. And that is why Satan hates our mothers. We all can pray. Dear Heavenly Father, again, thank you for this blessed day. Thank you that we can come here to honor our mothers, honor the concept of motherhood, to recognize the great mothers and women in the Bible, our foremothers that stood in the gaps, that raised godly children, that took not only leadership roles, but also understood the concept that Satan hated them. They hated the concept of a godly woman that was willing to do whatever she had to help bring her race and her people to Christ and to pass that on to the next generation. We pray that you'll continue to bless all our mothers here and our women here in this church, our women and mothers that's listening to us on the internet, and our young daughters as they grow up, that they understand this beautiful concept. They have a precious gift to steer the next generation to love their race and love their family. We ask all this in your holy and precious name.
He'll do for you with arms wide open. He'll pardon you. It is no secret what God can do. There is no night, for in God's light you'll never walk alone. Always feel at home wherever you may roam. There is no power can conquer you while God is on your side. Just take Him at His promise. Don't run away and hide. It is no secret what God can do. What He's done for others, He'll do for you. With arms wide open, He'll pardon you. It is no secret what God can do. It is no secret what God can